FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and it is 8817. Make of that what you will, you numerologists out there. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, kindly email me at kl@kerrylutz.com. North Korea, been in the news a lot. Unless you're as much of a hermit as the Hermit Kingdom itself, you got to be hearing about it and wondering what should we do, if anything. What is the best way out of this mess? And when it comes to foreign policy, we're always glad to have Ivan Eland on with us. And Ivan, you are a senior fellow and director of the Center on Peace and Liberty at the Independent Institute. Ivan, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back, Kerry.
Hey, so North Korea, we're dealing with what appears to be somebody that I won't cast aspersions upon his sanity or lack thereof, but he certainly doesn't play by the same rules as the rest of the world. What's your take on the situation and what the country should be doing?
Well, I think he's erratic, if nothing else. You have to be careful when you say, some people deem him crazy, but I think sometimes he's crazy like a fox. I mean, he does know what's going on in the world because he gets cable news, even though his people don't. And so he's been kicking up lately with a couple of long-range ICBM missiles, which are intercontinental ballistic missiles. Those are the long-range nuclear, long-range missile, which can carry nuclear weapons. And he's tested a couple of these that could go perhaps to LA or even as far as Chicago. And of course, that's caused hysteria in the national security councils, even though this has been building for a number of years. The last 3 presidents, Clinton, George W. Bush, and Obama, all tried to negotiate for him to give his nuclear program away and the missiles away, and in exchange for food aid or other types of developmental assistance. And of course, those agreements have fallen through largely because of North Korean cheating. And so we're down to the fact that we don't have too many good options left here.
Yeah, not many good options. What do you think of the latest developments with the UN resolution, China supposedly agreeing to abide by it? And what about the Chinese? Do you think they will help with the situation?
Well, they've agreed to the resolution, so the resolution did go through, and they have been getting worried themselves about North Korea, although the Chinese have countervailing interests as well. Number one, they don't want the regime to collapse for 2 reasons. The first one is they can foresee a situation like Germany after the Cold War, where West Germany just kind of took over East Germany, and they were inducted into NATO. Well, this is might be a similar situation where South Korea, being the stronger of the 2 countries, takes over North Korea, and then you have U.S. military bases and U.S. intelligence gathering facilities right on the Chinese border, because the U.S. and the South Koreans are in an alliance. So you'd have a hostile alliance, or so the Chinese would think, right on their border. The second thing they don't want is refugees by the millions coming across the border if the regime collapses. So in other words, they don't want to impose such sanctions that will cause the regime to collapse. And China accounts for about 85% of North Korea's imports and exports. So that's a tremendous, percentage. Usually when you put on economic sanctions, you can always find other countries that will trade and cheat on the target. And that's why you can raise the prices to the country and that sort of thing, but you can rarely choke off all trade. Now, in this case, since there's a peninsula and they only have one land border with the Chinese, most trade has to go through there that doesn't come by sea. So there's more of a potential for sanctions, but still, sanctions have not really been too good of a tool in the past. And I'm afraid that when the stakes are high, and they are for North Korea, because North Korea is scared nuclear, that the United States is going to do what it did to Saddam Hussein, who had no nuclear weapons, and Gaddafi had agreed to give up his nuclear program. That is to say, try to take out the regime. And so North Korea is very scared about that. And so I don't think there's any circumstances where they're going to give away their nuclear weapons, whether we put sanctions on them or anything else.
But if China were to abide and really cut off 85-90% of their trade with the outside world, they would collapse on their own, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, they could. There's a obviously the communist system, particularly in the North Korean way of almost totalitarian control over everything. It just doesn't work. You have this problem of incentives that you have with the Chinese communists and the Soviet communists, and so this is endemic to communist regimes. And I think the people are starving there because a lot of the stuff, money goes into weapons and nuclear programs and missiles, and therefore the economy is sort of could collapse. Although people have been predicting the North Korean regime's collapse for decades, and it hasn't happened yet. So, but certainly China could increase the pressure on them.
Yeah, and the question is, because this guy is a menace, and look, we can't be the world's policeman here, Ivan, but at what point do you look at what he's doing to his people and say enough is enough? I mean, these people, unlike most people in the world, populations are getting taller because due to increased caloric consumption. In North Korea, the people are getting smaller and they have chronic malnutrition because he's spending a huge proportion of the country's GDP on weapons, on the kleptocracy that communism inevitably devolves into. So there must be something needs to be done just on a humanitarian basis, don't you think, Ivan?
Well, the problem that we have now at this late date, because the horse is, if it's not out of the barn, it's racing out the door. And the problem is you don't have too many options. If you want to do a military option, first of all, it's unlikely to get all the facilities because a lot of them are buried and hardened with heavy concrete bunkers and that sort of thing. And all the nuclear prospective countries after the Israeli Osiris raid on Iraq's nuclear reactor in 1981, they all started burying their nuclear facilities and hardening them with this concrete. The other thing is they've now gotten solid fueled missiles. Before, they had to take the missile out and it took them a long time to fuel it up with liquid fuel. Now they just roll out of the cave and shoot it. So you have a problem. Are you going to take out a lot of these facilities and missiles before they're launched? Probably not. You may get some of them, but of course you can't bomb knowledge, and the nuclear weapons and missile technology is fairly old at this point, and therefore, it's hard to take it out. The other big problem is we have allies in the region, South Korea and Japan, and we have military bases in Japan and South Korea, and also Seoul is only 35 miles from the border. So if we would even do a sort of a surgical strike to get some of this stuff, this guy could start an artillery barrage. They have thousands of our artillery tubes and rockets just across the border from Seoul, and they could kill millions of people in Seoul, which is where the main population concentration is in South Korea. Unfortunately, it's very close to the North Korean border. So the military options don't look good. And of course, Trump is now running the same policy that Obama and his predecessors ran, and that is sanctions, more sanctions, which we were just discussing, and diplomacy. They're trying to negotiate with them, but it's unlikely that he will give away these nuclear missiles and nuclear program. So then, what do? You have cyber. Maybe you can do something with cyber like we did against the Iranians. And we also have missile defense, which works part of the time. We haven't been too successful with that, but that's an option you can still pursue. And then, of course, good old-fashioned deterrence. I guess the good news, if everything else fails, he can probably be deterred just like the Soviet Union and Maoist China were deterred during the Cold War. Now, some people say, well, but this guy's crazy. Well, the dictators, their main function in life is to stay in power and to stay at the top, because they get all the riches and whatever. And so therefore, he does have a home address. Now, unlike terrorists who don't have a home address, countries, no matter how quirky or erratic or crazy, if you want to call them crazy, they still recognize that they can be wiped off the map by the world's greatest nuclear arsenal, which we possess. I mean, he'll have a few weapons. We have thousands. So he has a small country. We have a big country. Now, that it's not a good thing that he's getting these capabilities, but deterrence did work during the Cold Mao Zedong, who he was very radical, and he was sort of a Kim Jong Un of his day before he simmered down a bit, and he threatened to use nuclear weapons when he got them in the 1960s. And there was a debate in the Lyndon Johnson administration about whether they should try to take him out, and of course they decided not to for probably a lot of the same reasons. And he was successfully deterred during the Cold War.
Yeah, true. Wonder if his military capabilities are really substantially overrated. I know all these reports, thousands of artillery pieces, rockets, but a lot of the stuff is homemade, and they just don't have the best quality control in North Korea. So I just wonder how big the threat really is. Plus, there's a lot of countermeasures that we don't really talk about for these battlefield artillery pieces, laser, defensive weapons that are now seem to be in pretty wide circulation. So I just wonder, obviously it's not something you want to do if it can be avoided, because there will be major casualties. But I just wonder if his military capabilities, Ivan, are greatly overguesstimated.
Oh yeah, I think they are. He's got a 1 million-man army, but it's not really worth all that much. Now, these artillery pieces, they could probably eventually take him out after a few days, but the question is, how much damage are they going to cause in the first place, until then? Now, we're going to win this war, and if he tried to invade the South again, he has to go through these channels. The geography and the topography is such that there's channels that he would have to invade through down the mountain ridges and whatever. And of course, we have overwhelming air power, so we would make mincemeat of his forces. We would eventually win a war with him, but the problem is, how much damage would he cause to our allies? Are we going to help defend South Korea by destroying it? So, and we also have to be careful. Some of his missiles can hit Japan, and we have military bases there, as well as the Japanese being struck. Now, a lot of his missiles are not very accurate, and that is a question on these long-range missiles that could hit the United States. He's had kind of a Wile E. Coyote type of missile program, as you pointed out, but these recent tests have shown that they have made progress on that. There's still a question about he could get it over here, but could he really hit what he wanted to hit? But if you have a nuclear weapon on it, and it hits something on land, it's going to cause quite a problem. And so you don't have to be as accurate if you have nuclear weapons, but he's also got these warheads are heavy that you put on these missiles, so it cuts down on the range of the missiles if you have a nuclear warhead. The other problem that you have is, and he may not have perfected this yet, is the really long-range missiles go outside the Earth's atmosphere and come back down in, and they can burn up on re-entry because of the heat. Just like in the space program, they had to,
They're going to shield them. And,
so we don't know if they have perfected that yet. So there's still some stuff out there that he may not be able to do, and certainly his conventional weapons are probably overstated. But anytime you have a 1 million-man army with that many artillery tubes and rockets and stuff, he can cause some damage before we get him under control.
Yeah, no doubt. So there's no good alternatives here. What do you think is going to happen here, Ivan?
Well, I think we're going to just there's a reason why policies exist, and we've been muddling along since the Clinton administration. And I think that's what's going to happen. Trump has claimed claimed that he's going to take, he's alluded to the fact that he's might take military action, but I don't think that's going to happen. The sources say that there's no preventive military attack plan. And so I think we're going to keep battling on with the same thing Obama did, despite Trump's rhetoric of, our basic policy has been impose more sanctions. And this regime has been kind of immune to that, and try to get them to negotiate. And they're also trying to do that. But of course, that's what the administrations before Trump have done. Now, Trump has been a little bit more vocal, with the Chinese and, at least publicly, to get them to do something. Now, whether that's going to work or if it's counterproductive by publicly embarrassing them, they did vote for this resolution. So maybe Trump is having some effect there. And China, I think, is a worthwhile avenue to pursue because, as I say, 85% of the imports and exports that China has come from there. Now, there's also been talk about extraterritorial sanctions against Chinese banks who facilitate a lot of the trade with their, and loans and everything to the regime. So that might be another option. Of course, there are always drawbacks to imposing more sanctions, but because they haven't worked in the past. But those are some other things that they could do.
Yeah, and look, I don't think there's ever been a country as dependent upon another country as North Korea before. So, maybe the sanction thing, it could potentially be more effective with them.
It might be because of the land, because they only have a land border with China, and China's a big trading partner.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I guess we're just going to have to see what happens here, Ivan. There's no good solutions for sure, but maybe somebody will think of something, or maybe the North Koreans will fix their own problems. Wouldn't that be a nice thought? Anyway, Ivan, it's always great having you on. Best place to find you and your latest work? www.independent.org. All right, and we'll have a link to it in our show notes to this interview. Don't forget to email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. The Facebook page is Financial Survival Network, and Twitter is @KerryLutz. Ivan, always a pleasure. We will talk to you again real soon. You be well.
Okay, thanks, Kerry. You too. Bye.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.